I want to thank you very much for joining us this morning for morning coffee. I am greeted by three wonderful guests, and I will remember their names. I know it. Deborah Seiler, Esther Leverage, and Lucy Berger. I also, and each one is going to be able to tell the story. We're going to be focusing on ways to improve our health. We were going to center more on diet, the food we eat, but we're really going to expand this to living a healthy lifestyle in general. I really want to thank Elizabeth Sandoval, who's in the audience, for Alignment Health Plan, who has very graciously provided wonderful yogurt and fresh fruit for us this morning, and her daughter Simone, who is going to be in the audience. This is audience participation. She's going to be bringing a microphone with her so that you can add your story as well. This was originally planned by a Renaissance member, and Deborah's going to talk about the Renaissance Society, Allan Keown, who has been very involved in the blue zones and was going to talk about that aspect of him. He's not able to be with us today. He's in our hearts and our thoughts. We're still going to talk a bit about the Blue Zone Initiative, that what the history of it is, and also a little bit about what's happening in Sacramento. And then before we begin, though, I just wanted to throw this out to the audience. How many of you came for specifically because of the topic today? Raise your hands. Okay. And others are from ACC. We know that you are willing victims for joining us today. But one of the things I was planning on doing was a lot more history, because I don't think that people realize that being carnivores has not always been part of our diet. That if you look at how people have lived in the past, especially if you look at California, which we will talk about, what the indigenous people ate in almost every country still tended to be plant-based, with very little that was done in the way of hunting. Most of it was gathering and planting. So we're going to be talking a lot about that. We're going to talk about some of the typical approaches that you can do for the American diet. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, though, was something that I didn't realize until I was doing research. The average life expectancy has more than doubled between 1800 and today. And in that time, at the 1800s, the average life expectancy was 30. So we've more than doubled. But even though we have doubled our life expectancy, we are now living it less healthy, an unhealthy lifestyle, more than ever before, and it's affecting almost everything. And we're going to, yeah.
The life expectancy that you're quoting worldwide or just in the United
Worldwide.
States? Worldwide.
Worldwide. And now with COVID, it is reduced more, even more because of COVID. But we're going to be taking a look today at kind of the whole person, what our lifestyle choices are, how we eat. I wanted to get started by asking each of our guests to share a story. Then we're going to open it up to the audience. And my question, the first one is to Deborah, was if you could just share a brief story of what it was that you ate when you were growing up, and what aha moment or seminal moment in your life made you change or alter how you live.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. When I was growing up, I had just turned 4. My mother passed away. And so my dad was left with 3 little kids to try to feed. He didn't know how to cook. He didn't know how to boil water, let's say. But he had an interesting sense of nutrition. He would go into a tirade if we kids asked for white bread. Oh no, they feed white bread to the hogs. We only eat whole wheat bread in this house, okay? That was my dad. He would go out, he worked in the telephone company, and he'd be out, and he would pick up pieces of fruit. You know, he just had this kind of natural sense of nutrition, except that he felt very strongly, perhaps because we were anemic at the time, but he felt that meat was important. And so I can't tell you how much fried liver we ate. and fried meat was what he provided for us. I mean, fruits and vegetables certainly, but that was the one gap in his healthy nutrition lifestyle. So as I got older, I started subscribing to a publication called Nutrition Action Newsletter. And it's put out by the Center for Science in the Public Interest. It's a really very high quality, easy to read, very understandable publication. And that added to my sense of, my understanding of good nutrition. I think I had good nutrition throughout my life, pretty much, except for the meat side of it. And that really raised my consciousness about looking at labels and I'll go to the grocery store, and if I'm buying a can of beans, I'll get 5 cans and I'll compare the labels on the backs of those cans. And the Center for Science in the Public Interest was very instrumental in getting that food labeling done. About that same time, I got a dog. And she was a big mixed boxer mix of some kind. And when we got her, she had ligament problems. Long story, she was the $10,000 dog, right? We had to have the bones chopped out of back legs and put together and so forth. She was about 3 years old. Well, she lived to be 17. She lived to be 17. And she was just a people person. You know, if anybody talked about her, she would jump and prance and go around and everything. And so at 17, one day she couldn't walk on one of her legs. We took her to the vet. They x-rayed it, and where they had bolted the bones together, one of them had broken. She was 7. There was nothing they could do. There was really nothing they could do. So we were just, heartbroken about this dog. And the vet came in, told us the news. So we rallied. We got her some nice dog food. She loved food. And we got her the best can of the dog food that she never got at home because I wouldn't feed her that stuff, but she loved it. So she had this wonderful can of dog food. The vet gave her a little anesthetic, I guess, or something to deaden the, and then came in a few minutes later after it had, taken effect. The vet came in and said, this is it, and gave her the shot, just a little shot in her paw. Very peaceful. Within about a minute, she was gone. And still makes me cry. And I realized this is not the way they slaughter animals. This isn't the way. They're not put down gently with, the mother lying, draped over it, feeding it dog food in a peaceful, humane end to this animal's life when there was nothing else to be done. That is not the way animals are slaughtered. And from that day forward, I never ate meat or fish again. That was it. It was out of my diet. And I have subsequently come to learn really how badly most farm animals are treated. And I think it's coming out more and more how they're treated. So that was kind of my epiphany moment, really, was how we ended our dog's life and how animals are treated. At the same time, I was reading this Nutrition Action newsletter and realizing that the environmental impact, detrimental environmental impact of raising animals is huge. I mean, the carbon footprint is huge for this. So that's a little bit about my story.
Thank you so much for sharing. Esther.
Oh my. Well, I kind of came to eating like Deborah, but in a different sort of way. I didn't know about slaughtering of animals. I didn't know about all the antibiotics that are put into their bodies so that they can be killed so that we can eat them. I came at it from a very selfish point of view. I was in Ireland, and we've been traveling all over the world, and my knees, and I have to say, I used to weigh 282 pounds. Okay, so anyway, my knees were just giving out on me, and I kind of like to say, God brought me to my knees. And so as we were leaving Ireland, I thought, I can't take one more step. We were at the airport, and my husband had gone ahead with the luggage and left me there with mine, and I thought, I'm going to go on strike and just sit down here, and he's going to have to come and find me because I can't take one more step. But I managed to take it one step at a time and got to the plane, got home, and I thought, what am I going to do? Because that was in May of 2016, and in September we were going to China, and I thought, if I can't hardly walk now, what am I going to do in a few months? So I did the typical thing, went to my doctor to find out what I could do. He said, well, I can give you knee injections, or he said, you can keep on taking your pain medication, or he said, I could refer you to orthopedics for a possible knee replacement. And I didn't like any of these options, you know. But then he dropped the bomb on me and said, oh, but you'd have to lose 70 pounds first before I could refer you to orthopedics. So that left me in no man's land, right? So I came home and I just didn't know what I was going to do. And it was just a beautiful thing that happened to me, all through a book. I have a friend and she gave me a book, and it's called The McDougall Program for Maximum Weight Loss. And I had no clue how this was going to change my whole life. This was 7.5 years ago. I lost 130 pounds. I got off all my medication. I got rid of all my diseases. I had GERD, diverticulitis. I was one time labeled manic depressive. I got off that. I was on lithium. I was on levothyroxine for my thyroid. I had constipation. I had, you name it. You know, I was on sleep apnea machine and all this stuff. And the crowning glory, and I can cut to the chase and make this really short, but by switching over to what Dr. McDougall proposed, which was eating plants, it even improved my eyesight. I'm now 80 years old and do not wear glasses. That's the power of food. And so I was being checked with a doctor at Kaiser for a macular pucker I had, and just 3 months after I got into the program, he said, oh, now we're to the point now where you can have surgery on that eye. And very sheepishly, because I was afraid of authority figures, I said, well, do I have to have surgery now? Because for some reason, I got this idea in my head that changing my eating would change my eyes too. And I don't know where that idea came from. And he said, no, you don't have to do it now. He says, come back in 6 months. So in 6 months, I went back and he said, your eyesight's improved. Come back in 6 months. He says, your eyesight's improved. Come back in 6 months. And this went on until 2018 or 19, at which point I said, you know, I still put my glasses on when it's in the middle of the night and I'm looking at my iPhone, you know. And I says, but I don't know if I need to do that or if that's going to protect my eyes or not. And I love this quote. He said, with your eyesight, you don't need glasses. Wow. So I went back to DMV the next time I came up for renewal, and sure enough, I'd had corrective lens on my driver's license for 30 years, and they took it off.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's amazing the healing power that our bodies, they want to be well, our bodies, and we're the ones that just keep throwing roadblocks in front of it. But we have the power, we have the knowledge, we have the wherewithal to know that, go back to what was created in the garden. Eat your vegetables, eat your plants, chuck the meat, chuck the oil, and you're on your way. And that's the short version.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're clapping for both of you.
Yes.
Okay, Lucy.
Yes, thank you for having me on. And I kind of made my way into the plant-based world back in 2014. And I had been heavy most of my life, eating just a regular standard American diet, which we call the SAD diet. And I knew I had done something to myself. I knew I had diabetes, even though I hadn't been tested yet. I just knew it. So I had a brand new doctor, and I sent her a message and beforehand said, I'm going to need more than 20 minutes because it's Kaiser. You know, I said, I'm going to need more than 20 minutes. I know. Sure enough, I did have my blood test, and I was diagnosed with diabetes back then. And so she gave me a list of resources, and one of the resource books was Dr. Neil Bernard, Program for Reversing Diabetes. And if any of you know of him, he's just a wonderful doctor, plant-based, well-known throughout the world. What's his program that he, nutrition?
Yeah.
No,
Chuck Carroll?
no, I'm just thinking of his physicians.
PCRM?
PCRM, Physicians for
Committee for
Responsible Medicine. Yeah, he's wonderful. And so at the same time, Kaiser makes you take 3 classes. It might be different now, but they say right away you have to take these 3 classes. And just by chance, the class, my first intro class to diabetes was up in Lincoln, in a little small classroom of people, and this, I think it was a physician's assistant. She was totally plant-based, and she made those of us in the room, made it very clear that the only way we were going to reverse our diabetes, not just control it or manage it through medicines. Of course, I was then put on 2 sets of medicines at the time, but was to go plant-based, whole food plant-based, and not processed foods, not a lot of oils. So I took that seriously, and I started eating that way. I was like swimming at 10 o'clock at night, because luckily it was still during the summer and it was warm and I could go out and swim. And I started checking my blood sugars, and within 6 months, I was off of one of the medicines, and then the next 6 months, I was off of everything. And my A1C level came down into the normal range. I also had been put on cholesterol medicine, and I stayed on that a little bit longer. I tend to have high cholesterol no matter what I do, but when I got to that point where it was so low, she took me off the cholesterol medicine as well. I lost about 120 pounds, and so my life just became so much more enjoyable. Within 2 years, I had retired, and I got involved in hiking and riding my bike and doing fun things, and became part of the vegan community. There's some very wonderful people in the vegan community, and they go out to lunch together and do a lot of wonderful things together. So that was my story. And it's wonderful not to be diabetic anymore. And when people tell me, oh, you can never, reverse it, that's totally untrue. If you take care of yourself, you eat a whole food plant-based diet, you will reverse your diabetes. So don't let people say you're stuck with that forever. So you're not.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before throwing to the audience, I wasn't going to, but I'm going to actually share my own story, which I'm going to call Why I'm Fat. And that's the excuse. And for me, my father, and lots of you've heard stories about him, grew up on the road from the age of 8 to 10. He lived on whatever scraps he could get. So when we were kids growing up, even though we lived in, wasn't abject poverty, but pretty close to it, he always made sure that we ate first. And he would literally eat whatever the scraps were, which meant that, and my brothers, I had 2 brothers, so you had to grab quickly. And that meant we were eating meatloaf and pork chops and whatever meat my father could afford to have. That was my excuse. As I got older, I was always the fattest one in class. I weighed 128 pounds. The fat shaming then, I think, is even worse than the fat shaming now. I was just bigger, and my mother would always say, you just have big, big bones. But I remember going to the doctor for my weight when I weighed 128 pounds, and I thought he put on my physical wow. And years later, I read it, and he said obese, 128 pounds. So that was at 17. The same year I applied to sing at Music Circus, same 128 pounds. I thought, quite a wonderful voice, and I made it all the way to the end, and they said, we love you, we want you to sing off stage, we can't have you on stage, your legs are too fat. And I won't go on the horrible treatment of my ex-husband, who always thought I was 30 pounds overweight. But when you keep on having a bad, you have a bad body image, it got to the point where I love myself. It doesn't matter how much I weigh. And so I allowed the pounds to, build up and build up and build up. What changed for me, because we have those seminal moments, just occurred November 20, whatever day Thanksgiving was. The day before Thanksgiving, I just suddenly sat there and I thought, I'm blaming everybody else for why I'm heavy. I'm why I'm heavy. I'm the one who's got to change. And something just turned off in my head from something that I have a wonderful doctor and nutritionist said, don't eat when you're not hungry. Stop eating just before you're full, right? And if an apple doesn't satisfy you, then you're emotionally eating and you need to stop. So it's not going to show for another 20 pounds. I hope to get with the big weight loss, but I've lost 21 pounds in 16 weeks, without trying. I do have to tell you, by just doing that and picking a healthy alternative over a bad alternative. I do eat fish, but it's steaming a fish rather than frying a fish. If I have a vegetable alternative that I can do instead, I do the vegetable alternative. But it's not a radical change to me. It's just something in my head that says, okay, something's got to change because everything else in your life is going right. And we're going to be talking about some of those right things that we do, because it's not just about food. It's about the friends that we have, the support systems we have, mental health, and all the others. But now I'm going to ask, is there anybody in the audience that has a story that they'd like to share? No? You're all too shy still?
Yes, somebody's stories in there. We have a hand.
Okay.
I have a question. On
Okay.
Facebook, the cookbook Mediterranean Fresh has
Yes.
been offered. What do you think, or how, can you talk about?
Yeah, so I'm most
I'm tempted to send for it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm not sure.
So we're going to be talking about different, and to me, diet isn't something you do to lose weight. Diet is how we eat. Diet is how we live. Some of us choose to do it a plant-based. But I will say I'm the most familiar with Mediterranean diet. It's what I follow now as much as possible. It's considered the healthiest diet in the world still to be able to follow. And that's an excellent book. There was a period where I maintained by that weight, 128 to 140, for 14 years of catering because I specialized in Mediterranean food. And that was the foods of Italy, Greece, the Middle East, France, where people aren't depending as much on meat. Meat is a supplement or a taste of than anything else. And that book is an excellent book. I've got it. So it's good to follow. And today, later on, we're going to talk about the cookbook that we created here at ACC and how you can take some of those recipes and make them a little healthier too. So any other questions or comments?
Thank you. I have been on Noom for
Good.
probably about 6 to 8 months, off and on. But my daughter keeps telling me I need to put more protein in my diet because I'm not a meat eater and I don't eat cheese or milk. I've kind of stayed away from the white products. So I'm just kind of wondering what you do.
I'm going to throw that out to our guests.
Thank you.
I eat a lot of nuts, which I adore. Nuts are very fattening, but because I'm vegetarian, I should say, I'm vegetarian, almost vegan. I still do eat eggs. So if they are pasture raised, if they're humanely raised, and I can verify that they're pasture raised, I'll eat eggs. So I do eat eggs in my diet, but I eat a lot of tofu. I love taking my old recipes that, with these wonderful sauces and making it with tofu, because the tofu just absorbs the sauce. So you get all the flavor, you get the protein, and it's very satisfying to eat. And I do a lot of beans, legume, the split peas and the lentils and all that kind of thing. So my doctor was a little concerned because I tend to be a little underweight, and I eat like a lumberjack. Seriously. My husband just looks at me like, "You're eating all of that?" I said, "Yeah, and I don't gain weight." But so my doctor was a little worried, and she had me sort of checked for protein, and I was fine. But it was the tofu, the beans, the lentils, the nuts are all great sources of protein, and quinoa. Quinoa is a good source of protein.
Good. Did one of you want to answer?
Well, yes, I'm a potato freak. Did you know that you could live on potatoes only and thrive? The potato has everything we need. In fact, to prove my point, I'll give myself a plug. This is my book. I met my husband at his donut shop, and we switched from donuts to potatoes. And this is my story, my 366-day journey on a plant-based diet. Everything in nature is there for us. I eat, in fact, I had 4 potatoes for breakfast this morning. And I just love potatoes. It's what you put on them that's a
Right,
problem.
that's the problem.
And the longer you can stay on a plant-based diet, your taste buds actually change, and you start craving the healthy food you're eating. And as long as you don't go back and forth, like a drug addict or a cigarette smoker or something like that, you stay clean, then that's what your mind wants, that's what your body wants, and it speaks, and it's just wonderful. Protein is so outrated. There is no one in the United States who has died of protein deficiency as long as they have enough calories. So throw the idea of protein and calcium out the window. You know, think of the calf, think of the horse, think of the elephant. Where do they get their protein, right? From grasses and from plants. And we go to the store and we want to cut off the middleman and go directly to the source, right, to get a good price on our products. Cut off the animals. They're the middleman.
Can I add something there? You can live that if you have enough citrus. That is the one item I don't think that the potato has. And I'm just going to use the diet coming over, because remember I talked history? 7,000 to 9,000 calories a day is what the average person ate on the way coming west. And that was in hardtack, potatoes, rice and other things that they could do. So they didn't have protein, or very seldom, unless they could shoot or fish for it. But the reason that we had the most illness, and the reason that the Chinese did not, I might say during the gold rush and after, was the integration of citrus, boiling things, and bad organisms. So citrus is one thing that you need to include along with protein for health. That's going to be my one addition. Lucy, what did you want? Yeah.
When you talked about potatoes, were you talking about sweet potatoes?
All potatoes.
All potatoes.
All potatoes, and really all rice and all beans and corn. Dr. McDougall wrote a book called
Yeah,
The Starch
starch.
Solution, and it's the starch we need. We're starchivores more than anything. And you look at the Asian community, how they lived on rice and vegetables, and once in a while a little fish, a little meat.
Right.
Meat wasn't their mainstay. You look at the Mexican culture, how they lived on beans and rice. You look at Asia and in the eastern part of the world, where they eat barley. You know, we are starchivores, and it's the starch that we need. And so look at your Asian culture, look at your Mexican culture, look at wherever, and that's been the mainstay.
So what you're saying is it's all kinds of potatoes,
Any potato, yes.
regardless of where they're from.
Right.
And there are hundreds of varieties.
Oh, I know. It's my favorite food. I just love them. There's nothing better than a sweet potato or a yam or a Japanese sweet potato. Put it in the oven for an hour at 400, and it's like eating pudding. I mean, it's orgasmic. It's so good. It really is. It really is. It really is.
Lucy, did you want to add?
Well, they've said pretty much what I've heard, what I do, and I don't think any of us are dying of protein deficiency. I think there's plenty of protein in all of the plant-based items that were mentioned, and so I think that you guys have, already mentioned all of the key items that I eat too.
Do we have? I think we had another question from the audience.
No, I just had my story that I wanted
good.
to tell. I'm Michael Inaba. I'm originally from the Bay Area. And when I lived in the Bay Area, I got Lyme disease from a tick in my neck. And it didn't get better. And I tried antibiotics. I did hyperbaric oxygen treatment, all sorts of things. I couldn't work. So I didn't have health insurance. I didn't have any health care. Even when I did, there were no doctors who knew how to treat what I had. I went to UC Davis. They said, we know what you have, but we don't know how to treat that. And there are doctors out there who will tell you that they do, but they're all quacks, so don't believe them. So I was on my own to figure this out. And what I realized is that there was no miracle cure pill, or, I had an open prescription for antibiotics for years, which was not good for me. And then I found a book by Dr. Singleton, who is a physician who had Lyme disease, and it was called an anti-inflammatory diet. And he really got his life back by figuring out what he needed to eat. So this is where I am now, is trying to live anti-inflammatory lifestyle. The number one thing is what you put into your body. But you also need to sleep well. You also need to exercise. You also need to have supportive community, all of these things. And by this, and I never eat a potato unless it's a sweet potato, I'll tell you. So, because your diet has to be individual to you and what your body responds to and what your needs are. But I'm doing better now than I have in the last 20 years. It's like, and I intend to take care of myself and hopefully others for the rest of my life now in terms of optimal aging. You know, how can we support each other, especially as women as we get older and may have more limited resources. You know, we need to have forums like this, educators, and I thank you all for coming and sharing your message. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for bringing up that whole litany of things, which is absolutely true. That's what the Blue Zones ultimately is about. I think people center on it. How many of you know what the Blue Zones are? Raise your hand. Okay, so, pardon?
I've been in one.
Oh, which one? Loma Linda? Where?
Italy.
Oh, where? So, wonderful. Can you share a little bit about it?
It's in the island of Sardinia, which is north of Sicily. It's in a somewhat remote area in the mountains. It's about midway up the island on the eastern side. And part of it is that these people grow their own fruits and vegetables, but they walk and they socialize. Cars or motor scooters are pretty rare, but they're also isolated. You know, it's not on any kind of tourist road or trail. I mean, they're not up with the latest in whatever the latest is. They don't care. And part of what gives them their longevity is stress-free. Okay, so, you know, these people, you know, their average day is they go out and they talk with their neighbors. They could talk for hours, you know, about whatever, but not necessarily politics or current events because they don't really care about it, you know. And they're left alone and they don't bother anybody and they're happy, you know. They're happy to meet their neighbors and talk to them about whatever dish that they're making or going to make or whatever, or what plants or vegetables they have growing in their gardens. And it's actually a throwback to maybe the way life was or could have been or was in reality. When you say to them, who's the president of Italy? They say they don't give a damn who the president of Italy is. You don't even give a damn about the government of Italy. They just want to be left alone. You know, there's no freeways. There's no, you know, it's like basically one or two roads into town, one or two roads out of town. And so, you know, or what's going on in the world, or the war in Ukraine. We don't even know where Ukraine is, you know, and they don't care. It doesn't mean anything to them, you know, and they live very simply, very humbly, but very gracefully, you know.
Great.
And so, I enjoyed visiting, you know. I didn't know that there was going to be one there when
Just
I was.
Well,
when I did my research, you know, but I only found out about it through talking, because we stayed in the town that was close to it, and it was down lower. And so you can go up there, you know, you're gonna have to do some walking. You know, you can park your car at a certain point and then walk. And then fortunately for my son and myself, we could speak, read, and write Italian because they wouldn't be able to speak, read, or write English or Spanish or French or anything, you know. And it's kind of dialectic too. And they also kind of speak kind of fast when they get excited, which could make it harder to follow it. But it was a very simple life, you know. The clothes they wore were simple. Some of them made their own clothes, you know.
So I'm going to thank you for that. So thank you for saying, but I do want to just talk about the blue zones in general are in Italy, they're in Okinawa, Greece, Loma Linda, and I'm blanking on
Okinawa
and one other. There's a movement now in Sacramento to replicate that. Well, there's now more communities. The problem is something that you brought up, which is they tend to be in isolated and areas with simple lifestyles. We don't live a simple lifestyle. We're attempting to do that in Sacramento. We're trying to have these centers. There's other countries that do it as well. So how do we take some of the precepts from what they're talking about? So it's not just diet, but what I want to talk about now is social connection. And you brought it up. They start every morning usually at the coffee house. They end up in the evening with a glass of red wine. How do we kind of replicate that here? And we do it through organizations like ACC. That's one of the reasons that I was asked to be a speaker, but I stayed for the community. The people that we meet, even just playing mahjong, which is cutthroat, by the way, here, I have to tell you, and the cards aren't much better. Bingo, at least they let you win. For some of us, we have a group called the Renaissance Society that does that too. So to me, I can't stress enough, what I would like to see Sacramento be more than a Blue Zones community is a lifelong learning community. Understanding that we cannot separate out, you talked about play, we shouldn't be separating out our life from play to work to play to education to work to leisure. We should be trying to integrate all of that in our lives from the very, very beginning. So Renaissance Society, Deborah will talk about it, is for the, and so is ACC for the older community. I'm so glad that we had a visitor. May I ask you, Simone, how old you are today?
I just turned 30 on Christmas.
She's 10 years older than I thought she was, but that's okay. She looks fantastic. She's still young. I would love to see more where we have intergenerational is something that is also very important, that we don't isolate ourselves. I would never move to a senior community unless I had to for assisted living. I have to say that. But I'm going to throw it over. If you could talk a little bit about the Renaissance Society and its function as both a social, educational and social connections.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mary Ellen. And I'll just preface this by saying I read a book a couple of years ago by Sanjay Gupta, who's on one of the major networks and talks. He's a neurobiologist, and he was talking about Alzheimer's disease, and it was called, the book title was called Keep Sharp. And one of the things, I mean, he focused on diet, he focused on exercise, he focused on social, but he also highlighted lifelong learning. And so our organization, the Renaissance Society, is now 37 years old. It was started by a couple of professors who were getting ready to retire from Sac State, and they didn't want to stop learning, and they didn't really want to stop teaching. So they formed this society. We now have about almost 1,800 members. And we're a peer-to-peer learning organization. So in the course of a year, we have about almost close to maybe 300 offerings, classes, shared interest groups where people get together and they read The Economist magazine, or they speak French, or they do digital photography, for example, or gardening. I mean, all of those functions. And then we have classes on pretty much every imaginable subject, so just a broad range of things. So our music classes are particularly popular with the membership, and we provide. We're on Zoom. So prior to COVID changed the world, didn't it? And so prior to COVID, we were on campus on Fridays. And we were the old people. They called us the Q-tips because we had white hair. But anyway, so with COVID, we had to go completely to Zoom. And so we went Monday through Friday on Zoom, and then with COVID relaxing, it's not gone away, as you know, but with it relaxing, we're now back on campus. So we are Monday through Thursday on Zoom. On Fridays, we are on campus. And we have, in addition to our peer-to-peer teachers, so Esther gets an interest in the Great Lakes. So she does a whole series on the Great Lakes. And Lizzie gets an interest in aeronautics or something, and does a semester or maybe a week or maybe a single presentation on that. So this is the way that members can continue to not only teach, but also to learn themselves. So our members will study an area of history, for example. This is a popular area. They'll study that area of history and they'll teach it to other members. And so they're learning, they're sharing their knowledge, and the members are benefiting by being a part of that class. Mary Ellen mentioned the intergenerational activity. And Mary Ellen actually started this. Last year, we donated over $40,000 to the students' food pantry, because about 40% of these students at Sac State are food insecure. Mm-hmm. Many of them are parents, have kids, have parents they support, or siblings they support, and so forth. So it's a good feeling for us to donate to the food pantry. We just announced the award of 7 scholarships that we give to Sac State students. So these are really good feelings, but we actually have live interaction with the students through mentoring gerontology students, and we get to donate our aging bodies to the physical therapy doctoral candidates, and they see how many times we can sit up and down in a chair and how far we can walk in 6 minutes, and if we can touch our toes, and then they prescribe an exercise regime for us. But it's wonderful. These young, beautiful doctoral candidates in physical therapy are so sweet, and it's just a thrill for our members to be able to interact with them. So we really do, and we have social activities too.
Right.
We have First Friday, so tomorrow is the first Friday of the month. So after our classes, after our illustrious forum speaker, who is from Capital Public Radio, by the way, and we'll be talking about what's going on with Capital Public Radio. Then we're going to all go over to the Round Table Pizza and have pizza.
Vegetarian pizza.
Yeah, I buy it, so it's all vegetarian. Anyway, but so we have new member dinners, we have socials at the park, barbecues, and
a cook's tour of Sacramento. I have to put
Mary
a plug
Ellen,
in for
yeah,
that.
you need to pitch your cook's tour.
Yeah.
That's great.
Because the cook's tour. So what I wanted to, the reason I brought this up is ACC has wonderful programs. New catalog just came out. With hundreds of programs as well, really centering on what we're talking about with his healthy lifestyle. But also, I'm going to ask a question about music. Music is such an important part of my life, something that we use for mental health and enjoyment. So there's tons that are at ACC, but we have community presentations, of which morning coffee is one. So this is a joint program between the two of us, but anyone in the community can join us. Anyone can watch it on YouTube. This Summer Renaissance will have 9 free programs during the summer to introduce, and we do that every summer, to introduce people, and we're hoping to expand into libraries when we can, probably not fall, but later, to really start getting the community to be able to experience the joys that we're experiencing.
And we're trying to diversify our organization. So last summer we were celebrating diversity through various programs. We had a fabulous gospel choir performance at St. Andrew's AME Church, which is the oldest African American church west of the Mississippi. It was fabulous. I mean, our members were just gobsmacked, as the English say. And this summer we're going to tour the Sojourner Truth African Heritage Museum. We're going to have a fashion show with African textiles and clothing that has, where the African fashion model has been translated to the African American folks here. And so that's going to be very interesting. We've got a performance by the Capital Chinese Orchestra. and they're going to
Which
be
is
playing
fantastic.
their traditional Chinese instruments. We've got another musical performance by the Japanese folk music group, and they're going to be bringing in their traditional instruments. So these are
As
just a
well.
few of the things that we're offering
Well,
this summer.
I have a lot more questions, but can I have a time check, because they've hidden the clock on me?
So it's 11:15.
So 11:07, ooh. Oh, we're still okay?
We're okay.
We're okay,
We have a-
all right.
almost have a-
Well, good, I was getting nervous. That's when we started at 10. So now what I wanted to throw back to our guests again was what they do to create a healthy lifestyle beyond the foods you eat. And Lucy talked about this a little bit about exercise. I know for a lot of people, pickleball out there is like, right, part of the lifestyle now. But I'm going to ask what you guys do to maintain that healthy lifestyle that doesn't center on food.
Start with me again? Or
I'm going to start with
Yes,
Lucy and
thank
come
you.
back.
Okay, I did mention a little bit earlier. I do a number of activities. We've got groups of people that go bike riding together. We call them the Cycle Hussies. We have a group that does hiking together. That's our Trail Trippers. And those are wonderful groups. They're just informal groups of people, and anybody can create an event. It's kind of like a meetup, but it's just a defined group of people. But if anybody wanted to join, we do open it up to them. So we do a lot of biking, a lot of walking, a lot of hiking. And then there's a wonderful group called SacFit. I don't know if any of you have heard of SacFit. It's a long time organization for walkers and runners. So it has various different levels. You can join at any level that you feel like you're up to. I am back to the slow purple group, very slow walkers. But it's just fun because we get together with people that we really enjoy being with, and we go every Saturday morning, and the fellow who's in charge of it all, he also lays out a recommended plan for what to do during the week too on your own. Little walks and little stair climbing and just things you can do on your own. You don't have to belong to a gym to do any of those things. So that's a really fun group, the SacFit group. As I mentioned before, there are some wonderful vegan/vegetarian meetup groups in Sacramento. I think it's probably one of the strongest communities that are around, and they get together. And one of the things, like Chef AJ, I don't know if any of you have heard of Chef AJ. I know Esther has. She has a meetup group, and we had some wonderful potlucks. With music. Esther's husband's in the band, Party Boys. Wonderful music, and it's just fun to get together and talk and socialize. And and with Renaissance Society, I've been a member of Renaissance Society since I retired it's been 7 years now. And I just love it. And they have a walking group too called the Walkabouts, and they're a wonderful group of folks. And then I particularly love the music classes, and my favorite is the movies class. The fellow who's in charge of the movies class is just amazing. He knows so much about the movies that he's presenting. Like this, he does a theme every semester. This semester's theme is film festival favorites, because he goes to all these different film festivals over the years, and he's picked his favorite items to show us. And so it's really a lot of fun. And somebody will say, "Oh, do you have time to do this?" I said, "Well, let's see. I've got my Renaissance class, in the morning. I've got my walking or my biking in the afternoon." So it really keeps us together. And so what you say about having a community, I think, is very important.
Good. Thank you. Esther.
Well, I feel like I'm here to learn. There's so much going on. My life does center pretty much about my group on Facebook. It's not to brag the numbers, but it just shows how great the need is. There's 17,500 in my group on Facebook. And so every day I write an essay encouraging people, to follow their own truth. And then I do a video every day, and I show cooking on my line, and I take pictures of everything that I put in my mouth, except for my feet. But I think it's important because I'm a real simple person. And so people often will be attracted to high-end chefs who can make really elaborate food. But my heart's cry is how can we help people who are on limited budget to eat healthy food and not have to make gourmet type food. So I say, if it grows, eat it. If it doesn't, you know, you better pray about it first. I'm active in my church, and that takes up my time as well. But I love my daily writing every day that I do, and I love answering. The thing I like about my Facebook group is, and it's called Esther's Nutritional Journey, if anybody wants to join it.
Thank you.
But the thing I love about it is it's very interactive, and people ask me questions. And so after I wrote my book, I wrote my book because of the people in my group saying they wanted me to put these daily thoughts into book form, which I did, but it doesn't really tell newbies how to do it. So I wrote a beginner's manual, and I like to send that to people, and I also put that on my page to show, you know, just the basic things of how to get started. And then I'm a real big fan of the Instant Pot. And so it's just so easy to cook with the Instant Pot, and I do it every day. I say, what's in Esther's pot today? And I just list the ingredients. You know, and like this morning, it was a half of a cabbage and a couple of carrots and a couple of celery stalks and onion and a cube of, you know, what do you call it? A bowl
Garlic,
of garlic, yeah, and a cup of water, and set the thing for 3 minutes, and it's done, you know. So. And I just eat from that, and I try to eat that food every week. So like this morning before I came here, I went to replenish my supply at the farmer's market on Florin Road. So that's just kind of what keeps me going. And then, as Lucy mentioned, my husband's into the music thing now. So, you know, there is life after retirement. Right. You know, and it's so fun to. And I also go to the State Personnel Board, the retirement group, on a monthly basis, do that. And then I'm real active in the vegan meetups, you know, so we go to Zest Restaurant up in Rockland on Wednesdays. We've been going to El Papagayo and Carmichael on Saturday nights. The first Friday of the month is usually Loving Hut and Elk Grove. And, you know, so I'm eating out a lot, but learning that you can find food anywhere you want to find it if you're really dedicated to it, which I am, because I mean, I would be really embarrassed if I had to tell my people I just gained 20 pounds back. So being accountable to my people really keeps me on track. So it helps to have a coach, and it helps to have a mentor, and it helps to have community, which is why 4 years ago we started getting together for these meetups, because when you change anything from the tribe from which you came, you're an outsider. And the tribe wants you to come back to establish equilibrium. And actually, they want to kill you. If you leave the tribe, they really want to kill you. And so forming a new community is really important, like you're talking to about the Blue Zones. And I even went so far as to go to a Black African-American Seventh-day Adventist church for community, because at least the Adventists weren't eating meat, I thought. About half of them still do, but at least it was a starting point. So, you know, we're all searching for peace, we're searching for love, we're searching for self-acceptance, and it's just wonderful that this is just one way that I have found it in a deeper level. It's a very spiritual journey as well. Good. Learning that I had a brother who was an alcoholic and a drug addict, even though they were prescribed. And I thought I was pious and just so different from him, but I was a food addict and didn't know it. And the Food and Drug Administration, I think it's really interesting they put food and drugs together, but they have so controlled our food that's available. They know the perfect combination of putting sugar, fat, and salt together, so it is addictive, and we don't even know it. And so when people try to change their lifestyle, getting rid of cheese is a really hard thing because of that combination. Mm-hmm. So.
And I just have to say that I watch Esther's video every morning, and I don't eat what she does. I eat a lot more of it now, but she eats so healthy and so simply. You know, it puts me to shame, but I like to remind myself of how I would like to be eating, and it does make a difference in how I eat. It does. I realize, I could just you know, do the I use the Instapot a lot for everything too. And I said I could just, you know, throw that in and eat it. Why not? We don't think of eating things as simply as you can. And she's just an inspiration and how to eat so healthy and, you know.
Cheap. And cheap. It
And
can be
cheap,
so
too.
cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. All right, so thank you, Deborah.
Yes. So I'm a dog lover, obviously, and I have a 14-year-old hound dog named Elvis because he ain't nothing but a hound dog. And there's a reason that the noun hound as a dog is also a verb to hound. And that's exactly what hounds do. So this dog will whine at us in the morning until both of us take him out every single morning and every single afternoon. So every day in the morning I'm out for about 40 minutes, and then in the afternoon I'm out for maybe up to an hour. So, you know, when they say you should have 90 minutes a week or something, I'm getting almost 90 minutes a day with this hound dog. But one of the things that I'm the president of the Renaissance Society, and that takes a lot of my time. It's pretty much a full-time job, which at times is stressful, but Elvis will get me out for a walk, just as my blood pressure starts to go up. Oh, we're out for a walk, right? But it has been, like during COVID, for example, when we were all locked down, we were isolated and so forth, I never felt isolated, not for a second, because I was so involved in this organization, you know, with all the committees and all the people I meet, and the activities. Mary Ellen's cook tour. Well, you weren't doing that during COVID. That was more virtual.
Right.
But I'm back doing that. So my life is just. I get up in the morning and I have this Google Calendar, and I live by it. I mean, I check it 3 times a day. Because I have, you know, like today I started at 9 o'clock. I'm here. I'm going to a social for our membership, diversity and community engagement committee, and then tonight I'm babysitting for our 7-year-old granddaughter. So, you know, it's just my life is. Sometimes it feels maybe a little overwhelming, but it's so full. It's so rich, and the other thing I guess that I do is I try to live a healthy lifestyle by avoiding certain things. So, for example, we have a fairly good-sized yard, which I used to do the gardening until I got so involved with Renaissance. I did all my own gardening. But nobody gets into my yard, my little space here. Nobody gets in there with those gas blowers, mowers, you know, 80 decibels, the horrible gas fumes that come out of there. So I try to keep my yard as a preserve for the bees and butterflies and hummingbirds and so forth. So that's a source of just peace, I think, for me, is just going out in the garden and seeing the flowers, what's in bloom. I have a persimmon tree and I just finished the grapefruit tree. It was magnificent this year. I have blueberries. I mean, I'll have gallons of blueberries off my own blueberry bush. And it's all organic. So that's another way I try to live simply, you know, very simply.
Good. All right, so we have a few minutes to talk a little bit. I want to recommend a couple of books. One is, this is going to be on YouTube from ACC. She talked a while back. It's Amy Myrtle Miller did a book called Cooking a la Heart, 500 Easy and Delicious Recipes to Help Make Every Meal Heart Healthy. Somebody else brought it up. Sometimes what we have to eat is based on what some of our infirmities are, whether you have diabetes, inflammation, which is an issue. We created a book called The Foods We Share, The Stories We Tell, which is a Pan-Asian community cookbook. In general, we were going to talk about how you could make these healthier. I was going to use that D word. Pretty healthy. I have to tell you, if you don't bring anything else out of this, if you can forego what I'm going to call the Eastern European heavy meat-centric or even English culture food, which is, you know, roasts and everything else, and start looking at the countries in the Mediterranean, China, Asia, Thailand, India. India is almost all vegetarian-based. I was going to talk about eliminating, and part of me says what you can embrace. Instead of thinking I'm losing something, what can I embrace that it's new to me? Try something new. But if you did have to give up anything, processed foods, if it comes from a can, sorry, I grew up on if I won't even tell you what I grew up. I thought that all vegetables grew in cans, except for broccoli and cauliflower, which were so gray by the end of it. Spinach in a can with eggs, you don't want to try. But to give up processed foods in general, the closest to the source that you can get. If you can find, even stir frying, if there's another alternative, can you use less oil? Can you use an Instapot or something instead? When you go to a Japanese restaurant, which is in Japan, is very healthy, here, what do we get mostly? We end up getting a lot of tempura and fried dishes. Are there something that's not fried that you can do? So I'm just going to say, still get the book. It's a healthy approach. And then I'm going to quickly ask my guests if they have any last minute things they want to add, or the audience. Anybody else want to add something?
I do want to share this young lady's comment about the inflammation. Because I have a good friend who actually taught me the differences between vegan, vegetarian, plant-based eating. I knew the difference between vegan and vegetarian, but I didn't really understand the plant-based concept. At any rate, but she tells the story that she used to be like at least 100 pounds heavier than she is now, and her hands, she had this arthritis in her hands. She had to take an electric toothbrush, wrap it, which has a good sized handle on it, and she had to wrap that with a big cloth just to be able to brush her teeth because her hands were so limited. She now sits there and goes like this.
Aww.
Yeah, it was within months of converting to this plant-based diet.
Right.
And she's plant-based, so once in a while she'll have a little piece of fish.
Right. So can one of you describe what's the difference between vegan, vegetarian, and plant-based? They're terms that have a long history. I will say that because I prepared an hour on the history of this, I will do it for Renaissance in the fall, because it's a fascinating story of the evolution of how we came to eat meat is probably going to be what the talk is. But can one of you add anything? What's the difference between vegetarian, vegan, and plant-based?
Well, I think that vegan is no animal products
at all.
whatsoever, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate processed types of vegan foods
Right.
or things with oil, sugar, salt, and those are still not going to be good for your body.
Right.
So what I call whole food plant-based, because
Good.
sometimes plant-based itself is a little murky. It's
Right.
like all the terms are a little murky, but whole food plant-based means you're not eating processed foods, and you're still eating plant-based foods. Any kind of grain, bean, vegetables, fruits, potatoes as a vegetable, but all of those things that are still not super processed, and so that's probably going to be the healthiest for your body. Vegetarian has a number of different types of vegetarian, but basically they don't eat like red meat, but they might be a type of vegetarian that still eats eggs and dairy. You might have another one that just eats fish but no meat. So there's just a variety of vegetarian types of definitions, I would assume. But do you want to add to?
Do you want to add?
Yeah, I think when I think of whole food plant-based, I think of eating as close to as grown as possible. That's the ideal that I strive for, is that I say, if it grows, eat it. If it doesn't, or if it comes from a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, no. So for me, it's so easy, because right now I'm just living on what I get on a weekly basis from the farmer's market. So nothing is processed, nothing is canned, nothing has all this stuff added to it, preservatives. And this morning I was just reading a book called What the Health, and it was based on this movie that's out there, and this is just really great. And I was just learning about pasteurization, and I think this is interesting, why we think milk does a body good, and then it's pasteurized to kill some of the bacteria, and so the more processing we do, the longer the shelf life, the less is thinning our life. So that's my view. So I'm kind of a purist, but I love it because You know, it's kind of like fine tuning an instrument. You know, like 7 years ago, I knew something, and then as I matured and grown in this, I just keep like, oh, well, I don't need that either, and I don't even need that. And now I'm so radical, I look at my spice shelf and I don't even use anything but my spices anymore. So you don't have to do what I do. It's just what I'm called to do for my own body, my own mental health, and my own spiritual journey. And it's really exciting. So yeah.
Good.
So
You, before we wrap up, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Do I have anything I want to add? Just that this has been a wonderful journey. You mentioned the word journey, and I think it's been a journey for me. I think probably the hardest thing that I had to do, it was never hard to give up meat and fish and all of that, never hard at all, and I've never wanted to go back. But what I did have to do is I had to retool my cooking. You know, you couldn't just throw a pork chop in the oven or something like that. You know, I really had to study my cooking, and it's very satisfying. And so now I have this whole range of recipes, and I'll have this cookbook and that cookbook, and I write in the inside front cover, this was a good recipe, you know, so I remember them. And so I very frequently try new recipes, but I also have a range of recipes that I can use. So just retooling your cooking is something that is part of the journey.
Good. So I want to thank everyone. Thank you so much.
thank you.
And also to announce that next month is Big Day of Giving, so Morning Coffee won't be here. I'll be traveling in June. And one of the things I'll be doing is I'll be in Vancouver, but I'm getting to interview some Indigenous people from Canada on the new Indigenous food movement that's occurring in the Americas, so I'm all excited. And then we'll decide, I'm not too sure, probably not July, but we might be here in August, but most likely we won't get back to Morning Coffee until September. So instead, we invite everyone in the audience, everyone who's on, I still call this television, and on YouTube to join accsv.org. We'll give you the catalog for now. It's updated every 3 months. You can sign up so that you can actually get a newsletter to your home. Am I right, Sean? I believe so. And then also the Renaissance Society of Sacramento. If you just look for that, you'll be able to get our catalog and information about the summer programs as they're coming up. So thank you very much, and thank you, audience.